Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Tea with Che and Shai. I am joined, as always, by a longtime political strategist, Chaitanya Kamandori, fresh off his appearance on The Beat with Ari Melber, and I, of course, am Shai Porn, D-list YouTuber. It is election primary day here in New York City, a counterpoint to the sad happenings in our nation's capital on voting rights, which you were just talking about, the vote on the For the People Act on the floor of the
Yeah,
Senate.
it was an entirely predictable result. I think Ari had mentioned it was an entirely predictable result. What was promising this morning was when Manchin said that he was going to allow this to continue, and there was some hope that perhaps enough Republicans would want a debate on this. Would want. This was just a vote to allow the Senate to consider this. That's what it was a vote on. It was not the actual vote on the bill, but just to consider it. You would have a normal order, consideration of legislation. You would have debates. You would have compromise. Manchin had already offered a significant compromise. Basically allowing voter ID rules in the states if they wanted, and also I think very perhaps damagingly to allow states or Republican secretaries of state legislatures to purge voter rolls if they so deemed it. I mean, that was a tremendous concession, to be honest with you. Right. But Stacey Abrams came and said, this is fine. We can work with this. Barack Obama came out and said, this is fine. We can work with this. So it looked like a pretty good progressive victory was possible. But then you saw what happened just now.
Right. Yeah, they didn't even want to discuss it. But that doesn't keep us from discussing it. So what was the For the People Act going to restore that had been removed in 2013 from the Voting Rights Act? Was it restoring the algorithm and the federal oversight?
Right, but the biggest one was federal oversight. That was the federal oversight was probably the single thing that Republicans really did not want was federal oversight. I think the algorithm did get a lot more press, but the federal oversight was specifically what they did not want again. They wanted to basically be allowed to set the voting rules in their states as they deem fit, to just basically decide who votes and who doesn't vote. And the idea was that obviously because of Jim Crow, we got rid of that and we established federal oversight. And then John Roberts said, well, Jim Crow was 50 years ago. That's actually what he said. He said it was 50 years ago. That it's time to not be governed by things from 50 years ago. That's basically what occurred. That was the first step of it. And the John Lewis Voting Act that I think one Republican that supported Lisa Murkowski did basically undo all of that. Basically said we would have federal oversight once again for elections, that there would be federal oversight on this. But only one Republican, Lisa Murkowski, said that she was in favor of that. Nobody else did.
Right. And of course, the problem with removing the federal right, not so much at the state level, because those are pretty obvious changes, but the local jurisdictions were able to just tweak and change voters' suppression tactics almost at will without really anyone noticing, unless they had a direct line to the ACLU. Or
correct. Yeah, it was. The reality is that if anything we learned from 2020 and what happened there in the aftermath with the riot is that we do need some kind of uniform standards that everybody kind of agrees on, that are fair and reasonable for everyone, and that we should be able to achieve this. The problem is that I feel that the Republican Party, I don't feel, I think everything pretty much know, the Republican Party likes this current system, the way it's set up. They want to sort of deepen and make these restrictions much worse because they feel that's basically their only way to win. And I think that's really the shame of it. One of the things I brought up on the beat was that if you want bipartisanship, you need to have more moderate Republicans. And this act would create moderate Republicans. It really would. I mean, moderate Republicans could benefit tremendously from this. They would be in nonpartisan districts. They'd have more younger and minority voters to appeal to. Moderate Republicans could be players in this, and I just don't think that people see that. And that's what's missing in D.C. Is the moderate Republicans. We have plenty of moderate Democrats.
You think this could actually bring back the what seems to be extinct moderate Republican?
I do. Yeah, I really, I think that I think it would be, they would be forced to go in that direction. I think people forget that there used to be a lot of moderate Republicans in the United States. And the most famous, of course, being Nelson Rockefeller, hence the term Rockefeller Republicans. But he famously was not only in favor of civil rights, but he walked out with Jackie Robinson, who was a friend and supporter of his, out of the 1964 convention in the Cow Palace with Barry Goldwater. So that was really, there used to be a lot of moderate Republicans who were in favor of civil rights, who were in favor of issues of social justice, but they were definitely capitalists, they were definitely pro-business. They definitely were not a friend to labor. But they could definitely, with that particular platform, I would argue, would give Democrats real fits. They could be players in these new nonpartisan districts. The reality, however, is twofold. Michael Lind, a historian, pointed out that it was part of the Gingrich project to get rid of the moderate Republicans, to get rid of the Rockefeller Republicans out of the party. That was something conservatives really wanted to do because they were constantly fighting with moderates over leadership of the party. So they got the idea that we need to get rid of these folks. And then the Tea Party started primarying them in tremendous numbers, and then they really became extinct. But it has always been a conservative project to get rid of moderate Republicans, as much as it's been a conservative project to defeat Democrats.
Right. The Koch brothers founded Tea Party.
Correct. And the other aspect is, Mitch McConnell says, "Oh, I don't like Trump, and I have issues with Trump." He loves these Trump Republicans. The Trump Republicans are loyal lapdogs. They will follow him. They will not question him. They will not do anything of the kind. I mean, one great sort of scene, I think, in the movie Butler is you see in that movie, at the hour 48-minute mark, actually, Nancy Kassenbaum, an actress playing Nancy Kassenbaum, a senator from Kansas, going to Ronald Reagan and telling him he's wrong on sanctions to South Africa, that she's voting for sanctions to South Africa, that this is a civil rights issue in the United States. It brings up the worst elements of American history, etc. She tells him straight up that this will not stand, that she, as a member of his own party, is going to stand up to him on this. That's just something you don't see anymore. And that's not something McConnell has to even worry about, because the Trump Republicans, for all their bluster, they basically are just lapdogs. I think we talked earlier, maybe a good comparison was that they roared like a T-Rex from Jurassic Park, but they were actually like that cowardly lawyer sitting in the outhouse waiting to be eaten by the real monster, Mitch McConnell.
Right. It's true. It's true. But you have hope that, like in that movie, we can extract the DNA of a moderate Republican from the mosquito of voting rights.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the best analogy, considering the way that it turned out in that movie, or in the subsequent sequels, where they keep trying to make this right, and it never works out.
I mean, that's the Lucy in the football analogy. We keep trying to think we could work with these moderate Republicans, and they're not really. They're not really.
Well, we just don't have them. I mean, we used to have them.
No.
There used to be people like Lowell Weicker. There used to be people that said like Nancy Kassenbaum, Warren Rudman. They were moderate Republicans back in the distant past.
The distant past, exactly.
It's hard for people to remember now, but that used to be common, and they just don't exist. They simply do not exist. I mean, part of that has to do with gerrymandering, which this bill would actually eliminate. It would actually eliminate gerrymandering. It would create these nonpartisan, bipartisan commissions in each state that would draw fairer lines, and that would help moderate Republicans tremendously. Also, I think increasing young people, minorities, would help revive their brand a lot. What it would not help is it would not help the Trump people. The Trump people would actually be hurt by HR1. I don't think that's. I think is a fair analysis of it. But moderate Republicans could thrive, and there's no reason that that brand could not come back. It's the issue is that Mitch McConnell doesn't want that brand back.
Are there moderate Republicans that are just sort of being cowardly right now and kowtowing to McConnell, or do we
I
have to
really
wait for another
no.
election cycle?
No, I mean, I think that if you look at someone like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, they vote with Democrats maybe once every year. You know, they're considered moderate. But before that, there were people like Lowell Weicker, who was a leader on AIDS. There were people like Nancy Kassimov, as pointed out, who was a leader on sanctions South Africa. I mean, there were leaders on abortion rights in the Republican Party. You know, Gerald Ford, the Republican president, was pro-choice. I said he was pro-choice and proud of it, as was his wife Betty Ford. So there used to be quite a lot of moderates, who just existed, and they simply don't exist now. If they exist anywhere, they're much more on the Democratic side. But I do think that you would probably see a different type of Republican potentially emerge from HR1, one that would have much more durability. I mean, one of the things I kind of thought about when you think about Nelson Rockefeller and Jackie Robinson was this particular brand of Rockefeller Republican. I mean, it would be very potent. They would kind of be probably killing it in a lot of places that Democrats are winning. And they're not. I mean, Colin Powell famously said he was a Rockefeller Republican, and now he's a pretty staunch Democrat. I mean, he hasn't endorsed a Republican in quite a long time at this point. So I do think that's kind of a factor.
Well, we have a bunch of Republican cowards dying 1,000 deaths out there on the floor of the Senate. Why exactly don't Democrats just, even though we know the filibuster is going to stop these votes, why don't they, like today, just put them forward so we can see their faces, so we can shine light on them?
I think that there's still this bizarre hope for bipartisanship. I think that's exactly what it is. I think that that's exactly what it is. It's also the nature of the way the filibuster works now. So the filibuster, basically, if you're a Republican, you want to filibuster a piece of legislation, you just email Mitch McConnell, and he's more than happy to filibuster it. So there doesn't need to be what occurred in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. We talked about that before, where you have the talking filibuster, where to actually filibuster something, you have to take the Senate floor and just keep talking and talking and talking, read the phone book, whatever, and just keep going at it. There's been some discussion, Manchin's actually brought up this idea, let's revive the talking filibuster, that would make it harder and rarer. I actually, however, think somebody like Ted Cruz would just love that talking filibuster.
Sure.
I can just imagine him sitting there camping on the Senate floor, talking, everybody's ear off, and just raising money online with those types of antics.
They're the Ted Cruzes, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, who just love the sound of their own false outrage.
Right.
Would eat that up.
They would just love that talking filibuster. I don't think that's a solution in any way. I do think HR1 is a great solution. Just getting more moderate Republicans, I think that's a great long-term solution to doing it. And I also think that the way that we are framing this in the media, that this helps Democrats and hurts Republicans, I don't think that's accurate. I think that the reality was, not so long ago, there were moderate Republicans who would have done very well with HR1. They would have done very well with that type of situation. And there's no reason that they can't exist again, other than the fact they're not allowed to exist because of gerrymandering. So I do think that's right.
Come back to us, moderate Republicans. Yes. Come back, veggie sores. Roam the earth again. Exactly. Don't be the Dilophosaurus. Don't be a victim of the Dilophosaurus. The Mitch McConnell Dilophosaurus.
What kind of dinosaur was that? I don't remember the Dilophosaurus.
That was the spitting dinosaur when Wayne Knight's character.
Yeah, before we wrap up, I mean, I think that the most ridiculous element of Jurassic Park, I think it was just only in the last movie, where they have this idea of turning the dinosaurs into weapons. It just seems like just completely nonsensical that they would do that.
Well, that was just a callback to that's a callback to Aliens, right? Where they
correct.
The way Uni Corporation wanted to weaponize the xenomorphs.
I think they got that. There's that. That's exactly where they got that from.
Yeah, another great example of a coward dying, a coward's death.
Right. Paul Reiser
with Burke.
Pretty mad about you, Paul Reiser. But
was that pre-mad about you? That was pre-mad about you.
It was pre-mad about you.
It was like concurrent Beverly Hills Cop.
Correct. Like he kind of had his film career, and then when Seinfeld took off, he became Paul Reiser or Star Mad About You. That was kind of the
Yes.
idea behind Mad About You, which has been sort of forgotten.
Future Oscar winner.
Yes, but that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But
All right.
yeah,
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about on this
no,
topic?
I think it's just sad news. I guess that's about it.
It is. It is very sad news today. But we keep fighting that fight.
But
Thank
in
you
New York,
again.
so you can still go to vote, so you can still exercise your rights in New York
Yes,
City.
polls are still open. Sad. I mean, we had a lot of early voting this time around. We have our ranked choice voting the first time. So
Yeah, who
small.
knows? Who knows how long any of this will last, based on where the Senate Republicans are going with things. So you can
What you
just
mean,
go.
the ability to vote, or the
Okay,
ability to vote early?
it's certainly not the early voting. That's something they definitely want to get rid of. But
Yeah.
that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. For Chaitanya Kamandori and myself, Shia Porn. Take care of yourself and have a good night.